in his kingdom. He saw, I don't need you guys. Paying you guys a lot of money. Might as well just wipe you out. So he started to kill them. And Daniel, who knew the Lord, he asked if he could have some time to pray to his God. And, just give me a little couple minutes, right? Give me some time. Well, Daniel prayed to the Lord. And God revealed to Daniel not only its interpretation, but the dream itself. And Daniel made it very clear in Daniel chapter 2, verse 27. He said, Daniel answered the king, and he said, King, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers, cannot declare to the king. But then he says this in verse 28. But there is a God in heaven. I love that. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. And he has made known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the when? The latter days. Again, we bring this story into our time today, into the latter days, right? Your dream and the visions of your head and your head upon your bed were these. So Daniel then describes the dream exactly as the king had it. And he says it, verse 31. You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. And then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold were all crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Just an amazing dream that was given to King Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel then went on to explain and the dream and explain what the dream meant. Daniel describes now for us a series of kingdoms that would rise and fall. That's what Nebuchadnezzar saw. That there would be kingdoms that would rise, but then there would be a stone, and we know who the stone is, right? The stone is Jesus Christ. And he would wipe out all the kingdoms of the earth, and he would set up his kingdom that would last forever. So the first kingdom that Daniel saw, the first kingdom is, of course, the kingdom of Babylon. Babylon being the head of gold, right? The second kingdom, as it would unfold in time, the second kingdom would be the Media-Persia Empire. The Medes and the Persians, they defeat the Babylonians, the Babylonian Empire. The Media-Persian Empire was the chest of arms and silver, right? Of arms, the chest and the arms of silver. So I want to just pause here for a second and note that the gold is better than the silver in value, right? King Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, as he saw it in his dream, it was gold. It was splendid. But then the next kingdom, the Medes and the Persians, they were lesser value, you see. They were going down in value. Now, the third kingdom, of course, is the Grecian Empire, the kingdom of Greece, the Grecians. That would be the stomach of of bronze, the stomach and the thigh of bronze. Again, going down in value, in greatness. The Grecians defeated the Persian Empire, but Greece was then, of course, defeated by who? The Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is represented in the dream of the legs of iron, but we note that it had toes, 10 toes, that was partly made of what? Partly made of iron and clay. Of course, these things don't go together very well, right? So this is interesting, right? What's being spoken of here with this 10 toes is that of the final empire that will be in the end days. It's represented of 10 toes, again, made of iron and clay. We'll look into this, right? Iron and clay, again, doesn't hold together very well. Iron is very strong, whereas clay is very weak. Now, Daniel at verse 36 in Daniel chapter 2, verse 36, he says to the king, again, this is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. Verse 37, you, O king, are a king of kings. You are a king of kings. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom. Notice, God gave him the kingdom. You want to take note of that. There's no kingdom that hasn't been ordained of God. God is the one who allows men to rule, allows kingdoms to rise, and he's the one who allows kingdoms to fall. But he said of the king, he said, King, the God of heaven has given you the kingdom. He's given you the power. He's given you the strength. Again, it's always very important for us to always remember these things, right? Where all of our strength, where all of our power come from. And he also has given you the glory. And he says, wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and he has made you ruler over them. You are this head of gold. But then, of course, Daniel doesn't know the kingdoms that are about to come. And he says to the king, but after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, and then another third kingdom of bronze, and which shall rule over the earth, all the earth. It's interesting that the king of Greece, what's his name? Alexander the Great. That's right. He did rule over that. You get points for that one. Good. He'll rule over everything. And notice, the fourth will be of iron. Verse 40. Inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything, and like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Again, the Roman Empire was the one that really crushed everyone, right? Any insurrection that was raised, Rome would come in and just completely crush anything. Again, this is the amazing interpretation. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, in verse 41, partly of potter's clay, partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it. Right? So the power of the Roman Empire will be in the 10 toes, right? Just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic and clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. And we'll dig into this a little bit tonight. Now, as you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another. Just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Again, in the last days, we can expect a kingdom to come that will be established, that will last forever. That is none other than Jesus Christ and his reign, right? And the kingdom shall not be left to another people. Like that's the end kingdom. That's the final kingdom. And it shall break in pieces the people, and it shall break in pieces the king, and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. And inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. This dream, notice what Daniel says, is certain, and its interpretation is sure. Again, whenever you read the Bible, whenever you read about the things that are about to come, just like when they look at Israel, that could never happen. Israel could never come back into the land for thousands of years. Until 1948, again, as we've been reading, we said there's no possible way. How can God do this? But I have learned over time to never bet against the Lord, right? His words are true and they are sure, and everything that the Bible speaks of shall come to pass. So this interpretation, 2,600 years ago, again, this dream that was given to King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. And again, if you're taking notes, I see some of you guys writing these things down. Babylon ruled from 626 to 539 BC. Overtaken by the Medo-Persian Empire, 539 to 334 BC. The Grecian Empire, 333 to 147 BC. And Rome, 146 BC till when? It's a trick question. Because Rome was never defeated. That's the interesting thing with this study. Rome imploded. Nobody conquered Rome. The Roman Empire was never conquered. It broke into pieces. It's partly strong, partly weak, right? But nobody literally conquered Rome, and that's the catch. Nobody defeated Rome. Rome just basically fell apart, much like America, right? As we keep going down this road of just this, it's an old-fashioned word, but it's true, a debauchery. It's just, we're just falling apart from within. We're corroding our morals. We don't know what is right, what is wrong anymore, and we're imploding as a nation. Right? And unless God does a new work, and unless God, pours out his Spirit and we have another revival, I don't see us going down a good path. And that's what happened to Rome. So Rome fell apart. And what we have today is what was, we await, as it speaks of 10 toes, or we could say 10 nations will be in the last days. And what I'm waiting for is a revived Roman Empire of 10 nations coming together again to form this revived Roman Empire. All that's left is 10 toes. That's what we're waiting for, I believe, in the last days. Now, we are now, again, waiting for this before the end. And the last kingdom that will defeat the 10 toes that are set up will be, of course, Jesus Christ. That rock that will be thrown, it will take out this last kingdom. So Nebuchadnezzar was pretty impressed with Daniel, as I'm sure he was, right? It was, he not only gave him the dream, but he gave the interpretation. And Daniel was made head over Babylon because of the gift that God gave him. And in Daniel chapter 2, verse 48, then the king promoted Daniel. He gave him many gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. So Daniel was made chief over Babylon. Now you might say, okay, that's the end of the story with Daniel. But no, that is not the end of the story. After Nebuchadnezzar dies, God shows Daniel another vision. And Daniel sees these 4 world empires, again, in another vision, that each one gets represented by not glory. It wasn't a fabulous looking statue that Daniel saw. No, Daniel saw a beast. He saw it as what it is. The rule of man is a beast. So if you turn now to Daniel chapter 7, verse 1, after Nebuchadnezzar died, it says in Daniel chapter 7, verse 1, that in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. And then he wrote down the dream telling the main facts, right? Not exactly what he saw, because he tried to probably communicate exactly what he saw. He probably couldn't do it, right? Probably blew his mind, this dream. So Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision in the night, by the night, and behold, 4 winds of heaven were stirring up, notice, the great sea. When you read seas in the Bible, oftentimes a sea represents what we would say the sea of humanity, right? So when you read sea in the Bible, oftentimes it's speaking of people groups of humanity. So when Daniel saw this, he said that, humanity was being stirred up. And 4 great beasts, right? Verse 3, Daniel 7:3, 4 great beasts came up from the sea, from humanity, each different from the other. And the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. This is speaking of Nebuchadnezzar. When he was raised up, right, he ended up walking like a beast in the earth, right? And he was raised up, and he was ultimately given a man's heart near the end. He started to see that the God of heaven, God was God. And he realized that he was, remember when Nebuchadnezzar was walking out, he said, oh, look at all that I've done. Look at the work of my hands. He was admiring Babylon, all that he said he did. And God said, oh, you did it. Oh, okay. So you're going to walk around like an animal out in the fields for a little while until you're humbled. And then he saw the truth, that God was God. Now, it says there, suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, and it was raised up on one side, had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and they said, thus, arise and eat much flesh, right? So the Medes and the Persians, they were more powerful than Babylon. They were a little bit more fierce, and they ruled for a few hundred years, and that's the Medo-Persian Empire again. But then in verse 6 it says, and after this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, and there is Alexander the Great. His Grecian army was very fast, like a leopard. It conquered, it defeated other armies very quickly. It gained ground very swiftly. But then after this, it says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, the 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. And that is, of course, the Roman Empire. Had huge teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. Again, getting back to this 10, the number 10. Interesting to note the difference between, again, what Nebuchadnezzar saw and what Daniel saw. Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he saw glorious kingdoms. Nebuchadnezzar saw a beautiful statue, but Daniel's visions, Daniel says it's ugly. God shows the ugliness of the rule of man with this picture of beasts and nations that rule and vicious, right? And when you look at all the nations of the earth, what is it that's so, again, just conquering and devouring and defeating, and where's the peace, right? Can't we just all accept that, this is the plot of land that we have, and, kumbaya, and let's live together? But that's not man, right? Putin can't do that. Xi Jinping can't do that, right? It's in the nature of man to defeat, to conquer, to rule, to destroy. That's what man does. And God sees it for what it is. He sees nothing but viciousness. Now, I much prefer verse 8 when Daniel says, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up from them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and the mouth speaking pompous words. Here it is, guys. Here it is. This is now the raising up, Daniel sees the raising up of Antichrist, right? In the last days, we can expect Antichrist. The man will rise from the revived Roman Empire. This is where I believe that we should be watching the EU as it comes together. I believe that the EU, and we'll look at this for a couple of more minutes in a little while, but I believe that there's going to be a man that is going to come out. He's going to have eyes like a man. He's going to look like a really good guy. You know, he's going to be smart. He's going to be, he can talk. I mean, he's going to be awesome. But he's going to have pompous words. He's going to speak against the God of heaven. And this is now the precursor here of what's going to happen in the last days. Now, I watched in verse 9 till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. That's Jesus. His garment was white as snow. Hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame. Its wheels a burning fire. And a fiery stream issued and came forth before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. That's us. That's the saints. And 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. And the court was sealed and the books were open. And he says, I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. Verse 11. And I watched till the beast was slain. Its body was destroyed and given to the burning flame. As for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away. Yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. And I was watching in the night visions, Daniel says, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And then to him was given a dominion, glory, and a kingdom, and then that all the peoples, nations, languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, in his kingdom, the one which shall not be destroyed. So again, what we are anticipating at the last days is that Jesus overthrows all the kingdoms of the earth. Kingdom of heaven is established, and it shall never be destroyed. Daniel now says in verse 15, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions of my head which troubled me. I came near to the one who stood by and asked him the truth of all this. And so he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. And he goes on to explain basically what we have already been explaining about these end times. And this, and you could jump to verse 28, Dawn, and this is the end of its interpretation. He says, you guys can read this for yourself. At verse 7, and as for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me, and my countenance changed, but I kept the matter to my heart. So in this vision, right, guys, in this vision, we see that the fourth beast, right, will be the most powerful of them all. The fourth beast, the last beast. But then 10 kings will come, as Nebuchadnezzar's vision was told. They will come into power, rule the earth, but there will be a horn that comes out of that 10-nation rule. That's the Antichrist, only to be defeated in the end. And God's kingdom is set up, which will be forever. So, you know, you look at this and you say, PC, so the Roman Empire will be raised up, rule again. It sounds impossible. But again, I want to point once again back to what we have been studying in the Word about even Israel coming back, how crazy that may have sounded. And I'm waiting for the revived Roman Empire. That's one of the signs of the end times in the last days. Once again, that will rule the earth with the Antichrist coming from that union. Now, it's interesting that Jesus himself was referred to as the Son of Man. If you look at it's Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. When Daniel says, I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven, he came to the Ancient of Days, right? That's an important verse there in Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. It's a very important verse because Jesus then refers to himself as the Son of Man. By doing that, Jesus is acknowledging Daniel chapter 7 and all that's transpiring from Daniel chapter 7. You see, when Jesus speaks of the Son of Man at verse 14, at chapter 14 of Mark, Jesus was near the end of his life, and he was asked at his trial by the priest. The priest asked him, are you the Christ? Are you the Son of the Blessed? Are you him? Are you as you say you are? And Jesus answered the high priest. He said, I am. He agreed with the high priest that I am the Son of the Blessed. And then he says this, Jesus, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven. So Jesus refers back to Daniel chapter 17, Daniel 7 verse 13, and he says that I will be coming again. That he will come again not only to destroy the devil, but also he will come to destroy this revived Roman Empire, which God sees as nothing but a beast, right? Again, sounds crazy, maybe to some, but not to me. And why can I be so sure? Well, the Bible is clear that the Antichrist in the last days will come from the nations that destroy the temple. Now, Daniel speaks again in Daniel chapter 9. Again, if you go 2 more chapters over, Daniel chapter 9, again, speaking of these end days, where Daniel, it's impossible to go through this whole thing again, but the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel, one of the most amazing prophecies. I know I've shared this study in the past. Maybe you could pull it up on YouTube. But in Daniel 9, again, the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel, I just want to look at verse 26 of Daniel 9, where Daniel says that after 62 sevens, he speaks of the anointed one will be put to death and will have nothing. And the people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now, this is how we come to the conclusion that the last empire of the world will be that 10-nation, which I believe to be the EU, because of what Daniel says there, that the people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Who destroyed Jerusalem for the last time? Rome, right? Until Titus and the Roman legions came to put down the insurrection, that was the last putting down of Jerusalem. Now, since Daniel said the Antichrist will come from the people who destroyed Jerusalem, we know that the Antichrist comes from this Roman Empire. But it's not the Roman Empire from 70 AD. It's the Roman Empire that we can expect today. The revived Roman Empire. The ruler, Antichrist, will come from that revived Roman Empire, which we can anticipate today. Right? Now, here's another amazing thing. John says the same thing. It's not just that Daniel says it. John, the apostle, says the same thing when he sees a woman he speaks of in Revelation 17, the woman that rides the beast, right? With 7 heads and 10 toes, right? And the angel tells John exactly what he is looking at. And in Revelation 17, verse 9, John says, here is the mind which has wisdom. And he says the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Right? Rome is known as the land with 7 mountains. Right? If you go there today, Rome has 7 mountains incorporated into the city itself, right? There's 7 different mountains. Many of them have very good food, by the way, on top of those mountains. But there are also 7 kings, he says in verse 10. Here it is. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue for a short time. So John in Revelation 17, he's speaking about 7 kings that he sees. Now, just prior to Babylon, there was a great nation. What was that great nation? Just prior to Babylon. Anybody want to take a shot? Egypt. Egypt was a very powerful nation prior to Babylon, which in turn was defeated by another great king, another great kingdom who was defeated by Egypt prior to the Babylonians, the Assyrians. Remember that was a powerful nation, right? The Assyrians took the 10 nations to the north. Babylon comes, they take the 2 nations to the south, the two tribes, excuse me. Yes, the 10 tribes were taken by the Assyrians first, remember? And then the 2 tribes to the south, Judah and Benjamin, were taken by Babylon. So it's interesting to see that John saw 7 kings. Now, revelation was given to Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. So if we include the first 2 great kingdoms by John, it kind of like unfolds correctly, where you see the 7 great kingdoms: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, right? The Medes and Persians, and who else? The Grecians and the Romans, and then what? The last one, the 10 toes, the EU, right? Say it again. Egypt, the 7 great kingdoms: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, the Medes and the Persians, the Grecians, the Romans, and then the final one, the 10 toes, which will be the last great kingdom of earth in their eyes. Not in our eyes, in their eyes. But the Roman Empire, the revived Roman Empire. John said now 5 nations had fallen. Right? John says 5 nations had fallen in Revelation 17. 5 had fallen. So the 5 that had fallen at the time of John's writing, right, would be what? Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Media, Persian Empire, Greece. He was in the midst of Rome, right? In Revelation 17:10, he said, 1 is. John was alive during the Roman Empire. 1 is. He was talking about the empire that that he was a part of at that time. Rome was ruling when John wrote his revelation on the island of Patmos, where he was exiled. But then John says, and the other has not yet come. That's the kingdom that is yet to come. That's the revived Roman Empire that is yet to come, right? The last earthly kingdom will be headed up by the Antichrist of this revived Roman Empire. Okay. So people will hear this, they'll say they're skeptical, I'd say yes, indeed. I understand why you feel so skeptical. Do we see a Roman Empire coming together? And I say yes, we do. We do see it coming together. After World War II, something interesting happened. After World War II, Europe was in complete ruin, right? From Nazi Germany, right? They lay in ruin. So Europe, they came together to form a union, right? It was for economics. It was an economic union to help prevent another world war from destroying the nation. So they formed this union back in 1950. It was called the European Coal and Steel Community. European Coal and Steel Community. That was comprised of Belgium, of France, Germany, Luxembourg, Netherlands, and Italy. The agreement between these nations in 1950 was that we need to agree to not build weapons without permission from each other, to keep the world safe, right? So what that agreement, 1950, what that agreement did was to basically decrease the likelihood of a war. And it worked pretty good for a while. This treaty worked so well that in 1957, they expanded out into other economic kind of places, right? They expanded. This treaty was called, interesting, the Treaty of Rome. Makes you think, It was called the Treaty of Rome. So what came about was this European Economic Community. It was called the EEC. 1973 comes, Denmark, Ireland, England, they joined. It's getting bigger, right? In the 1980s, Greece, Portugal, Spain, they joined the party. And in 1992, what we see today is what is called the EU. The EU. In 1999, they created what we now know as the euro, the common coin, the common currency of the time, right? Today, the EU has 27 nations and over 500 million people in that EU. Now, is the EU the 10 toes that Nebuchadnezzar saw? Could be, right? Could be. I'm not positive, but I do find it intriguing that the 27 nations that form the EU today is largely pretty similar to that which the Roman Empire ruled, right? It's very similar. And with the same blood of the people that were back then from the Roman Empire. It's the same blood, it's the same people groups. I do find it interesting that the treaty, again, was called the Treaty of Rome. I don't think that's by accident. And I also find it interesting when we think of the EU, how, like the 10 toes was going to be made up of what? Steel and clay. Steel and clay. Some of those nations are very strong, but yet some of those nations are very, very weak, to say the least, right? Of course, the United States and China at the top of the heap, right? The U.S. has a gross domestic product of $28 trillion a year, followed by China that has $18 trillion in GDP, speaking of yearly. But then, when you look at the nations of the EU, you see that Germany is number 3, England is number 5, and France is number 6. That's pretty powerful. When you put them together, and you look at them as a conglomerate, as together, they're pretty strong economies. But also in the EU, you have Iceland, you have Estonia, you have Malta, which are very weak economies. So again, if you look at the EU today, they do struggle with, well, you should pay your fair share. Why should we pay? You know, they're starting to fall apart a little bit, right? You see that England took itself out of the euro. They don't want any part of, you know, why? Because the steel and the clay does not hold together very good, right? And yes, the EU is made up of 27 nations, which is not 10, but will there be a new 10-nation council somewhere along the line? Arise to make new allegiances? We know things happen quickly, don't we? Right? We know things happen very quickly, especially when some charismatic leader comes on the scene, and that will change everything. He could change everything in a moment, right? So guys, all I know is that the Bible will definitely prove itself to be true. There is this revival going on in the Roman Empire happening right before our eyes. And I think that the framework is right there. The framework of, again, when will these things happen? In the last days. Again, we're just adding evidence after evidence after evidence to what we've been studying about the end times, right? Can any other generation over the past 2,600 years been able to say, yes, this is happening in our day? No. There hasn't been any other time period like this that we can look at this time and say, wow, right before our eyes, this thing is coming together in Rome, right around Rome. No other generation can say that. Only one, our generation. Men have tried. Men have tried to revive that Roman Empire through force, right? Again, you look at Alexander the Great. He tried by force to gather this empire to himself for the Grecians, right? He tried, right? You had Charlemagne, you had Napoleon, you even had Hitler, who tried by force to raise up this great last kingdom, but none were able to do it through war and the conquering. But we can expect one to come who will conquer by his personality, right? Revelation speaks of the Antichrist coming with a bow but no arrow, right? He won't have to use force. He's going to sweet talk. He's going to be such a charismatic leader. That's what I'm expecting to come from the EU. Some leader like that. And again, I think that these are the studies that just makes us think. Just makes us think like, wow, you know. Maybe we need to keep shorter accounts with the Lord, you know. Maybe there's some some ends that we have to tighten up, you know, because that time is coming, I believe. I believe it with all my heart. So let's thank the Lord. Let's just praise him. Father, again, we thank you for this amazing dream, Lord, that you were so gracious to give to Nebuchadnezzar, and then to give the dream and its interpretation to Daniel that would help us, Father, in these last days. That we might see these things unfolding right before our very eyes, and that we would lift our eyes to heaven and say, Lord, you are soon to come. So again, Lord, I pray for myself, I pray for my friends here, I pray for those online, that again you would strengthen us and encourage us, Lord, as we study all these things. that these would give us strength and power to live for your kingdom, Lord, to live for a kingdom that will never end, that we wouldn't live for any kingdom that is here on this earth, but that we would live for the kingdom of God, that we would bring you glory with our lives, that that you would find us, Lord, busy about your business. So, Father, we thank you, and we so thank you, we so love you for all your words. And we thank you in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Amen. So obviously I couldn't tie everything into tonight's study. But if you look at Daniel 2, look at Daniel 7, look at Daniel 9, I mean, Revelation 17, read it and study it. And I'm telling you, God will just give you insight after insight of where we find ourselves today. So if any questions,